Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode 2 of the Reaction Time podcast. We have done the most important thing in the birth and life cycle of any podcast, which is start to record a second episode. We did it. Hooray, hooray.
Yeah.
I can think of at least 3 podcasts I've tried to start in the past that I've recorded 1 to 2 episodes of and have never touched again. So we're going to do better than that. We are making progress. So I am David at Prophecy on Twitter. I am joined as usual by Steven at FNKY Ireland with a 3 on Twitter and Eric D4RK Penguin on Twitter. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
I'm hyped.
Doing pretty good. I didn't have to wake up at 1 a.m. To watch a series start, so...
I mean, you never had to, right? We have the technology of replays in this day and age.
I guess you're right, but sometimes, sometimes the allure is just too strong for watching, UOL take the stage.
It's important. I think it's important to watch some of them live. Eric and I both. So for disclosure for the podcast, where we dig in, Eric and I woke up and watched, I think, 4 of the 5 days of games live.
Right.
In the early morning, we did not get up and watch the final day of the 2 sweeps, and I don't have very many regrets about that.
No.
But it's been a fun week for the old sleep schedules with the 3 a.m. starts. So let's go ahead and dig into this. Obviously, we have had the entire play-in section of the League of Legends tournament. The final 16 teams for the main group stage are achieved. And we've got a lot of games that happen to talk about. And I think the place we've got to start is probably the biggest story coming out of the play-ins, which is Mad Lions being the first top 4 region team to not qualify for the group stage out of the play-in tournament since its inception. So let's start there. Eric, what was the biggest thing that went wrong for Mad Lions from the regular season to this appearance?
The biggest one was Shadow in the early game, and then transitioning leads. So in the regular season, Mad Lions was really good at playing around mid lane specifically, with Shadow backing up Humanoid, getting Humanoid leads, and then Kaiser roaming out of bot to then join with them and then take over the map. And even in playoffs, Shadow was actually one of the junglers who I expected to have a good Lilia performance going into the play-ins, and his win rate on Lilia was, I think, 0. They didn't win a game with Lilia in play-ins, at least in the regular play-ins. They might have taken 1 game with it in the best of 5 series, but overall it was just a very poor AP jungle play from Shadow overall. And a part of it could be overall team comp issues, which we'll probably get into more if we ever talk about Lilia and the picks that were really showing up in this meta. But a lot of it was their early game presence just wasn't there. And so it turned into these hardcore carry performances from Humanoid 1v9ing to try and get them out of these games. And that's just not going to be enough.
A couple of stats on Shadow before we get too much deeper. He played in 10 games, which is obviously more than some of the teams that didn't get out of the first part of the tournament. Out of the 10 junglers that appeared, he had tied for the second lowest KDA at 2.1, had the second most deaths of any jungler per game in the tournament at 3.6. And let's see, gold per minute, 3rd lowest. Again, only he was down there with the V3 jungler and the INTZ jungler. Very clearly, by most of the statistical measures I'm pulling up, right at the bottom of the worst performing individuals in the role.
And compared with the other 2, a part of the more off-putting evidence with this too is that he actually had winning lanes more than the others did. Ince's biggest problem in play-ins was that their solo lanes got smashed repeatedly in lane phase, and V3 had similar problems, especially out of mid. And he was laning on the flip side with Humanoid, who was winning lanes and winning games off of winning lane, the few games that they won. So the fact that then he was suffering in these stats where these other junglers, compared to these other junglers, is really off-putting. One of the other big things is, from watching these games is that Shadow still played like he had a lead. He still did the same aggressive plays. It's like when I was playing with Steven in solo queue, and he just keeps
just
going
running
for
it
it.
down.
Yeah, and that's in some ways I like seeing that. It's much better than the NA jungler. I'm just going to, go into herbivore mode and try and farm my own jungle and do nothing to impact the map. But he definitely had some very obvious in-team deaths, especially on Lilia, that definitely cost his team a lot of tempo, and then eventually getting out of group or getting two groups even from plays.
So is this just like straight like we don't play on a stage, and we showed that Mad like increased dramatically once it went to virtual play, and then when we get to a stage, it seems at least Shadow just like straight up choked.
I wouldn't be too surprised with stage definitely being some amount of the impact, because on the flip side though, like as a team, it didn't seem like Mad was like it didn't seem like all of Mad's rookies were choking. Karzi had really good games and some sick team fights, specifically on Ezreal inside the series. There were other things going on with this meta that were very off-putting to me in play-ins as a whole, and I think those also really hurt Mad Lions more than these other teams, and LGD as well. So like Mad and LGD both had terrible best-of-1 sets in very similar ways, which to me is like is kind of scary going into group stage as we think about what this means for the teams that we expect to succeed and who are the favorites going into this tournament.
It's interesting too. Some of Shadow's problems I think lead into another conversation with Mad Lions, which particularly in their BO5, I think their pick ban had some question marks over it. Shadow never really looked like he found a comfort zone on any champion besides Graves, who obviously was one of the strongest champions in this play-in tournament's meta that developed. And the question of why are you putting him on this Lilia again? Why are we putting him on the Evelyn? None of this is clicking for him. And it follows on to the point with Karzi, where in their best of five or Supermassive, putting Karzi on the Senna as often as they did when he had been one of their biggest playmakers and best damage sources, I am not sure was the best decision for their team to succeed.
So there's a lot that you just brought up there. One of the big ones is like the AP junglers as a whole. Like when we talk about pick ban problems that were really present in the playoffs of regular season in all these major regions, the AP junglers were picked in tandem with an AD mid laner. So you're picking Lucian mid, usually if it gets through, potentially Aurelia. And then we even saw it paired with like Tristana mid in some of these games. And then you have the Lilia in the jungle. And then you have a top laner and like Ashe. And for other ranged engage that help you initiate with Lilia into these fights. But even when it's the Evelyn pick, it's usually paired with an AD mid laner or some damage source that then really balances out the factor, bringing this really AP heavy jungler. And then a lot of the auxiliary damage in these team comps is going to be AP from support role and other things that are happening. And so like a lot of the teams picking Lilia were picking it with like Syndra mid inside of play-ins, which is a really gross missed opportunity. Especially like Lucian was very high ban rate, which also contributed to this. So the obvious answers for how you build these team comps was taken off of the table. On top of that, with these like tank tops, tank top laners were also incredibly present, mainly because no one could beat Ornn and in lane or in game. And that also really skewed this because like teams were trying to pick AD tanks with these AP mid laners so that they could have an AP jungler. And it didn't work. It was very, very bad in general. The only games that Lilia won had Ornn on the same team in the best of one portion of the event. And that's and so like it was really clear that Lilia wasn't really what was succeeding. On the flip side, like about the pick more specifically, and this isn't true about Evelyn, it's more of a Lilia thing. One of the things that we see these pro junglers run into kind of historically is like the wave, or is the clear speed false brainwave pattern or whatever, where whenever a champion is really OP at like some core mechanics of the game, like getting gold, where you can clear multiple camps at the same time, you outpower through the jungle, you have more gold than your opponent at all phases of the game. That can really lead teams and players into thinking picks are OP enough that they can carry drafts, or that they can carry through games and then are good to play at a pro level. And Lily is actually one of these picks where, like I kind of talked about in episode 1, you have to build a team comp that has other forms of long range engage to make it succeed. And players weren't thinking about that. They were just thinking about the power of the clear speed and then bringing your own long range CC with the bowling ball into these fights. And it didn't work. And that was pretty clear from all of the games where you watch it, where the Lilia goes in, potentially lands a drowsy, but is killed with chain CC and damage then immediately following, partially because the gold gain lead from the farm. And Lilia was always up 20 CS in these games, so the clear speed is incredible, but then would still die to these fed tanks and other damage sources that then would just like power through in these team fight scenarios.
So that actually dovetails nicely into my next point. What do we think that the meta that was established in this play-in tournament is going to hold as we move into group stage? Or are the 12 teams that have gotten to sit and watch these games and just prepare, is there going to be a solution to the Ornn problem? Is there going to be a solution to Graves and Orianna being the dominant jungle and mid duo? Is it just going to get banned out every game? Are teams going to try and pick some solutions into it? What do we think we've learned from the meta so far, and is it going to change?
I think it's very sus that we, as like definitely not professional analysts or coaches or anything, were able to like very much correctly identify what the meta was going to look like. And to me, that is like everybody's going safe. They don't want to show anything off here. They want to show enough to get the wins. UOL busted out some different stuff, but mostly this is like pretty on the nose from playoffs. Like not much was really changed around as far as like priority picks or what we're bringing in. Like people are more comfortable and familiar with Lilia, but I think that's also what Eric was talking about, is like they were so comfortable on it that they forgot to draft around it. So I think what we're going to see is like drafting around Lilia, and I guess just straight up banning Ornn. Did Ornn lose at all in play-ins? One game?
Well, the one game where like Orianna was on the other team, correct? So it was like the Ornn lost to one of the other undefeated champions, and then there was and who was it too? Because like there was also, if I remember right, I think that was a serious mismatch of a game, and it wasn't the Ornn's fault. It was like, didn't GA just like power through mid in that game?
Yeah, I'm trying to find. It was Legacy Team Liquid.
Oh, okay.
Was the one loss with Tapoon on the Ornn.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that game just like. That game was not the.
It was the first Legacy Team Liquid game, which was just a flat stomp.
Yeah, it didn't impact play
Shen. Yeah. Shen, and he lived through that lane, and then the rest of his team just like won the map, and it was very brutal.
And it should be noted that game literally was the fastest game of the entire play-in stage, 20 minutes and 25 seconds. It was not close, and that's part of the thing with Ornn. If Ornn doesn't get to be level 13, then some of your problems with Ornn go away.
Yeah. And so my big other thing is that like even in the best of 5 phase, we saw the meta start to shift a bit. The top lane pool changed largely because Ornn was banned every single game.
Yes.
But or most of them, I should say. I think Supermassive let it through once. But like a lot of it was due to a lot of that top lane pool even shifted in the best of 5 series, with LGD played more typical LPL top lane champions. And to be fair, it wasn't the top lane matchup that like won them that series, but it definitely changed even in the best of 5 phase with teams moving towards Renekton, Camille, and these other more lane focused top laners than the Ornn into Scion or Shen nonsense that we were getting earlier on. So like I'm really curious. This is my biggest question. Like it's kind of twofold. The first question is like, are the better teams just going to let it through? Because like Damwon doesn't need to ban Ornn. G2 doesn't need to ban Ornn. And so like, are they just going to let it through, or and in which case that's a sign, because like these lower tier teams might have to rely on that pick in order to try and sneak games through. And then on the flip side, then there's like, or is it banned all the games because the best teams can just dumpster you when you don't get the handicap? And then that turns into its own can of worms then, where then we have this permanent pick that's locked into this ban cycle. And what do we do with that then? Because if Ornn is going to be permanently banned on one side of the map, and theoretically, like, personally, I see Lilia falling off in terms of ban priority as we go into the main event from the play-ins, just based off of its performance, as well as I think these teams will have a slightly better idea about how to control what's happening in these games. But if Lilia and Ornn end up in this red side ban list, then we're gonna see some pretty serious shift in terms of like which side wins matchups. So always going into the group stage of Worlds, like watching if blue side or red side wins more on these round robin games is really important too, because then you're going to start looking at which teams get the takeaways when they win on the other side of the map, for who's actually having a lead, quote unquote, in what's
blue
going
side
on.
with a 60% win rate through 38 games in the play-in side.
Yeah. And it wasn't that also because of the Ornn priority as well.
Right.
So I think like Ornn just becomes permaban because it just opens up your game, and I think like in these best of ones you can't afford to let that through, even if you have like, hey, we have a pretty set way to answer Ornn, just ban it, because it's going to just objectively open you up to do different things. And I think the same thing happens with Lilia, is that she isn't as high of a priority. She's more of a like, oh, we can make the comp work because we already picked up Ashe, or we already picked up something to build around. So I don't think she becomes a first round pick. I think she becomes maybe the last pick of the first round, or then a first pick in the second round.
It's a thing to note. Ornn was not the most picked top laner, obviously, because he was banned so heavily. If you take Ornn out of the equation entirely, assume he's banned every game, you have Camille, 13 picks, Renekton, 11 picks, Wukong, 8 picks, Shen, 6 picks, and then further down from there. So you've got, without the Ornn, it's 3 more carry-oriented picks plus Shen. And that makes it look much more interesting. We obviously saw the Scion and Malphite picked in this last round of play-ins as kind of Ornn replacement things. The Malphite obviously had a really successful game in its appearance, but I think the top lane pool is more unstable if you just take Ornn out of the picture.
Yeah. Didn't we also have like a Gnar as a off-brand
Gnar
as well?
The Gnar was very bad.
Yeah,
so,
it was bad.
It looked very loose. It could just be that he hasn't played it in ages, because a lot of that looked like matchup unfamiliarity, or just straight out plays. But the Gnar did not look good.
No, but it also won its game.
It did.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about like Gnar always snakes his way into like.
What was the mid laner in that game again? Because wasn't that another? Because it was that a
it was LTD
game?
Rainbow 7, so there were some probable questions about players' skill.
Was that one of the Kassadin games? Because
it was GA going 506 on Orianna into a lone Zizir.
Okay, because like a lot of the one of the other things we've learned about this meta is that mid lane is very important. Continually, again, still it hasn't changed, and so like one of the bigger spots where this really was showing up is like, and was one of the key difference makers we continue to see, even though Mad lost terribly in this event, is that like the mid laners in these the mid laners from LPL, from LCS, from LEC, still look like they're even from even Talon's mid laner, who was a sub from AHQ, like they looked a step above the competition fairly consistently across the board. When there weren't spicy picks introduced in the mix, like you have to give UOL the UOL factor in like literally every role on the map. But like GA's numbers throughout like the best of 5 portion of this event were very telling in like flip-sided matchups both ways, and they had plenty of games to prove it because of how bad their first few games were.
Yeah. they got the full warm-up cycle on.
Yeah.
A thing to note on Orianna that I find interesting. Fun fact, Orianna and Ornn have almost identical stats in terms of pick rate, ban rate, and win rate from the play-in stage. Both had 1 loss. Orianna had 10 picks. Ornn had 11 picks. And they were both banned 22 times, tied for second most banned.
What was the Orianna loss?
The Orianna loss, let me pull that up. Orianna loss was alone in I believe, one of the games in Rainbow 7 LGD.
Didn't they give Orianna like a small like Worlds buff as well?
Oh, it was
like,
game 3 where just everything went to crap.
I think they did. It was a little bit before Worlds, I thought.
Yeah, I think
where
it was
there
like
was
a
an
patch
Orianna
before
buff.
the Worlds patch or something.
Yeah,
like
they
that.
buffed Orianna and Corki on the same patch again, which is
Yeah.
always a terrible decision.
The world patch notes
yeah,
every year.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Corki didn't look good because Humanoid had a game on that, and it looked pretty weak overall. I think
But that was
largely
into
based
set
off of
though, right?
Well, he looked good in lane, and I think I don't remember if it was set, but like the bigger issue was CC. So like a lot of these fights for dragons and stuff had a lot of CC flying around, and I think this was another game of Shadow on Lilia, and then like what would happen is like their front line, which included Lilia, would get like popped, and then all it takes is like them hitting Humanoid with 1 CC ability, and then he was out of the picture.
And didn't they have Senna in bottom too?
It was into the Lilia was on the other team. The team comp that Corki was in was the Renekton, Graves, Corki, Senna, Leona team comp, which was the team that got the Malphite picked into it.
Yeah, there's just
a Malphite. Oh yeah, he just like ulted Karzi repeatedly.
Did he just tank tower shots too? Like.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the buy Ninja Tabis and win comp, right? That was the biggest thing everybody saw in Pickman that game. It's I'm playing against 4 AD based auto attackers. Buy Ninja Tabis. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, I think Corki has a place with the Lilia, with Ashe, and with an engaged top lane, and I think that is like if Lucian's banned, you go into Corki, and especially with the Lilia, and that is like you just need so many components to make Lilia work.
One of the other really surprising things to me in this was how low pick ban Zoe was for the entire event. Like very low pick rate as far as these games went. A lot of and I kind of understand with the Galio and TF making it through so much, but like that was a surprise to me because Zoe looks like one of the other real power picks that you can get out of mid lane in this meta, along with the Orianna. And that not happening was also made this feel very strange, especially compared to all these playoff events.
So
I think people are playing safe
on 7 picks, by the way.
I'm sorry, I talked over you.
Yeah, Zoe went 2-5 in 7 picks across the group, across the play-in stage.
What was she losing against? Was it the same matchup?
It was, let's see. And the other question you have to think about with these play-in games is it in some of these games where the player matchups were not as balanced? Let's see. Lane opponents. In the 2 wins, she was laning against Tristana and Galio. In the losses, Set, Azir, Syndra, Lucian.
And so, like, one of them was the game where Lucian got through, and I think that was it Humanoid on Lucian when that happened?
Yes.
Yeah, that was like one of the games that they won was when people let the Lucian through, and that's not a good idea. And then And then like the set is actually like a counter matchup, and like you see that a lot, counter in a loose sense, where like teams like picking it into the Zoe because you have the giant shield, you bring all this engage, and you can stand in a side lane, and so like I understand that matchup, but even so, like the fact that that was happening was it just seemed very weird to me that it was so low utilization.
Let's take a look at jungle real quick, because I thought this was another interesting thing. We've talked a lot about Orianna and Ornn. Orianna and Ornn were tied for the second highest pick ban presence.
Right.
Nidalee was the highest pick ban presence. Nidalee was banned in 23 of the 38 games and picked in another 11 of them. I think that her pick priority is only going to go up as we have even more junglers who prefer to play the Nidalee in the group stage. So she didn't get talked about as much as these other things. Her win rate wasn't completely out of control, and it's always felt like there are ways to work around Nidalee, right? It's a champion that traditionally falls off a little bit as you get into later portions of the game, kind of like a Lee Sin thing. You farm really well early, you do tons of damage early. As teams get more stats built up and get better, she kind of falls off. We obviously saw some amazing performances on Nidalee in the tournament, most notably Legacy Babbitt cleaning up a 3v5 fight at Dragon is the one that comes to mind.
With the set, that was sick.
Excellent play by Legacy's jungler. But I think we talk about Lilia's pick ban. Lilia was in 35 games. I was wrong about that set. Whoops, can't do math. No, she was in 33. I can do math. I was right. Ignore me. I think if her priority goes down, Nidalee's only goes up, is a thing to note. And then obviously Graves had the most picks of any one champion in the jungle. The only champion that was picked in any role more than Graves was Leona in bot lane.
Yeah. He just does too much. He's the best of, I can be a herbivore and just get into this game no matter what, or I can show up and thank you, Mr. Broxa, give kills or get kills. Like he can do it all, and it's really nice to have such a priority pick in the jungle, to where we are kind of seeing like a mid prio, a jungle prio, a top lane prio.
Well, and going into that, like we talked about how poorly teams were playing and drafting around AP junglers, and so Graves being all those things, as well as being the best of that for the AD way to fill that team comp role, like definitely made it a lot easier for these teams to figure out, especially with how many games they had to play, rather than try and figure out their draft problems for making these team comps work, which is largely what we saw evolve through this too. And so then like Kindred even showed up to like get peanut wins as we got further in, if the Graves got to
hit Kindred next.
Table. Yeah.
Kindred was tied for the fourth highest pick priority, by the way. 6 picks, 5 and 1. 4 of the 6 picks were peanut.
Yeah. And it's because it was an AD pick, so that he could get into the game and still farm up and be meaningful. And he also managed to get pretty lucky on Mark's way to go.
So with the AD junglers, are we going to see more AP mages in the bot? I think only UOL and... Was it just UOL?
No, I don't think it was.
There was another Ziggs
like
pick,
Legacy,
wasn't there?
I think Legacy played Graves bot at least once.
Not Graves bot.
Or
Ziggs.
not Graves, Ziggs.
I was like...
Sorry, wrong name.
Ray did also have a Ziggs game.
Yeah, and it looked best with UOL because of they looked much more comfortable with these like really off the wall picks in every role. It's a sheepy team. It will continue to be prepared for bringing some spicy gameplay. But they also had really insane lane stats when they were playing these bizarre picks too, which is the other thing you always have to look out for, because like a lot of teams will have these off the wall picks that either do well in lane or do well late game, where you can like where you're picking it either to win the lane really hard, or you're picking it to get an advantage in these team fights. One of the answers for the first solution is like Impact Singed. When Impact plays Singed in LCS, he picks Singed to proxy farm waves and to tilt the enemy top side of the map off the face of the earth. The other answer is when Bwippo plays top Zac. When Bwippo is playing top Zac, he is not playing that to win lane. He is playing that so that he can hit 6 Zac ultimates when you're not expecting it because you have full vision of the enemy jungler. These are just some of like these examples of like normally how those bizarre picks work. UO was impressive because they were picking things like the Ziggs, and they were actually even or ahead in lane, which is very different from when teams in other regions before Worlds had been trying this Ziggs bot. Is that the Ziggs bot would end up way down on CS to the Ashe lane, which is a very big problem when you pick this specifically to damage turrets. So if you're losing the lane that you picked this like turret damaging champion into, you have some pretty significant problems. The Tristana really popping off too was unexpected by me, but like I really appreciate it now that they have a penguin skin. But yeah.
So that's kind of all the thoughts I had on Pickban. There were a couple of interesting trends, obviously. A lot of people talking about Orin. More interesting stuff going on in the jungle that I think is going to continue to be a point to watch. What are your guys' closing thoughts on the 6 teams we are saying goodbye to? Do you have any that you're particularly going to miss? Any that you very much enjoyed watching?
Well, I really liked watching Legacy play. I think they had some really good, fun team comps. That they played Draven, they played Ziggsbot. They had they were one of the teams that had Mid Galio not look terrible. So that was a lot of fun. Oceania has already started having players get sniped by LCS orgs, so I'm curious to see how long Isles gets to play in OS, because
Isles is a rookie going out and playing as well as he did. He's the least experienced player on that team, and he was awesome.
Yeah, Isles and Tapoon, I think, are like the 2 players to like, and also maybe is it Bibap? Did I get that right? Babip? Yeah, I had it backwards. Babip also, like, I'd expect those 3 to like potentially be getting offers in the near future.
Yeah.
Because they looked great and they played well under pressure.
100 Thieves.
I don't know if Papa's going to get clearance to import another player from OCE in the near future. At least not directly to LCS. But you know, we'll have to see how that goes.
So they have that 100 Thieves Next program. That counts, right?
I don't know if a pro player from another region will take Next as an option. Like that seems very unlikely.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind with a team like Legacy is Legacy had got themselves a world spot going through their own region, taking care of their business. No reason they can't run it back and do that the same thing. So if you're leaving that situation, you can have higher aspirations to do better in a major region, but you might not go to Worlds again.
Yeah. That'll be one of the things. On the flip side, I really hope that Supermassive stays together. They were fun and good to watch. They're less likely to get imported out to other regions because a lot of their players are veteran talent already. Like Zeitnot and Armut have been around for a while and have already had Worlds appearances. Cacao and Snowflower are similar boat. Like they're
boosters.
Like cough. I love GBM in a coaching role. What a transition. How does that work?
Even though that's all his fault.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. That's like but like LGC was great. That was a huge surprise. Even V3 was fun. I was really happy with V3. A lot of the times the Japanese teams get beat worse than V3 was in this tournament. Those were my big takeaways.
Steven, who was your favorite team to watch of the 6 that are going home?
Legacy. For number run, they just ran it down against Liquid, so that makes me personally happy. And then they played well everywhere else. So, like, if you're gonna like turn off and on the Switch, it was convenient for my experience. But I think they had the best like innovations and the best like individual play that was just interesting to watch. I do think that this was like the closest play-ins by far, especially if you look at like LGD doing like the full like up and down roller coaster like week 1 week 2 more or less. And I think that just goes to show that like the gap is closing, at least at the lower brackets. I hope to see that it's closing in the upper brackets too, just for
I'm really curious how big of a difference, like the difference between the third and the fourth seeds from both Europe and China being the ones in play-ins this year is actually huge, because both Suning and Rogue are known for consistency and are really good at and have really good weak side lanes, both of them. So like the fact that it was Mad and LGD who were here instead of the teams above them was a massive difference in like how these results ended up. Because I don't think Suning or Rogue are anywhere. I don't think they play in more than one best of 5. I would say, with how these were going for these spots.
Yeah.
Since you guys already talked a lot about Legacy, who was also my favorite team, I enjoyed watching. You can tell Tally's a converted top laner in a lot of his picks, but he still played admirably for being a converted top laner. He's a long time OCE player, so it was great to see him play as well as he did on that stage. I want to talk about Rainbow Seven because I talked a bunch about Rainbow Seven last week, and they came through for me. Jose Dioto had some great individual pop-off performances, and they as a team, I think, performed well above expectations for what anybody had for them, going 2-2 in the single round robin. And obviously, the LGD series didn't go very well for them, but that's not really a surprise. But I was really impressed with their play. I think they're one of the better teams we've seen come out of either Latin American region, obviously now combined. But I hope that we get to see more from them moving forward in future years. And you have to wonder, you talked about NA teams looking at the OCE teams for imports. You have to wonder if Jose Dioto is going to get an offer from an LCS team. He's somewhat within the region as it stands. He's performed in solo queue and now on the highest competitive stage. I would not be surprised if there were some conversations around him in this offseason.
Totally.
I would love to see just more imports from these regions to at least make LCS more competitive. Like if we can offer enough money to get these people to bypass like potential future worlds, but just to make NA more competitive, we would see just like leaps and bounds in talent like development, where we are like nurturing through the academies and nurturing through like other next programs, but utilizing these higher end imports that aren't European or Korean, or like not like yeah, I don't know how I'm trying to articulate, but like just getting more talent wealth in LCS, even if it is pulling potential worlds candidates from these wildcard regions.
All right, last thoughts on the play-in stage of the tournament before we start thinking about the group stage. I would like you guys to select your all-star team from the play-in tournament and your tournament MVP, which is one player and then a team of 5, one in each position. Your team may not have more than 2 players from any one team. So I will start, since I picked mine before this to cover the topic. My top laner is Armut from Supermassive, jungler Kongue from PSG, mid laner Nomans from UOL, ADC Raze from Legacy, and support Core JJ from Team Liquid. And my tournament MVP was Kongue from PSG. So, Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, Kongue was also my MVP. Like, what a carry performance in a sub spot on this team, and the fact that they like managed to play around mid in these games when they had a very obvious, predictable game plan the entire time, like, was incredible. And he also brought some of the best jungle champ pool diversity out of any of the players in the first phase, obviously, because they didn't need to play any of the best of 5s. But I thought he was incredible. I totally agree with Armut top lane. I really wanted to say Boss. I love Boss as a player, but Armut had had done a great job. I have GA in mid, and you have to accept that he ran it down in the first few games, but when it came to the best of fives and he's up like 40 CS both sides of a matchup, with like Peanut not actually ganking his lane, but rather like just doing what Peanut does, like I just, it was pretty clear, like in the best of five portion, who was the winning mid laner in every game they were in. I picked Gadget in bot lane because I need at least one UOL team member, and Gadget brought the Ziggs and one lane with it, and he actually won lane on 80 champions too. That's what I'm looking for. And then Core JJ at support for me because he was one of the supports who actually got to roam, and then he made plays happen. And also his recon was disgusting. So I'm pretty hyped with how UOL and TL are looking going out of play-ins into the main tournament.
Steven, what were your picks?
So bot lane, I would do Isles and Gadget because I think that would be fun. That would just be very dominant, and you could just do anything with that. Mid lane, I think Humanoid did well. I would put him there, just to be solid.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, like he did fine. Like
he had the damage percent, he had the lane stats.
He was trying to drag the carcasses across the finish line. It's what it is. Armu, yeah, like he plays Malphite, man. Like Malphite's awesome, and to just bust it out and just like be super solid, and he like did well with like weak side pressure and stuff like that. So just solid, and I'm actually gonna take Broxa as the jungler just for as a thank you, Mr. Broxa, and like he did well. He did really well on his comfort picks, granted, but like going with the meta, if we were to like just take this team and like you guys get a mulligan and get to go into groups, I think that would be a fun team to see.
All right. With that said, we're going to be done talking about play-ins for now. We'll obviously talk about the 4 teams that got out a little bit more as we hit their groups, but we're going to start going through one group by one group. Before we do that, please, if you have a second, check out FNKYgames.com and FNKY.store for the YouTube channel and the store that has some fun stuff that you might enjoy. Go give that a check out. I'm sure that our lovely Steven will put in some links for you to click on at this point in the video, because he's a masterful editor like that. So with that said, let's dig into these groups. We'll start with Group A because A is at the start of the alphabet, and that's how we do things. My first question about Group A, which contains G2, Suning, Team Liquid, and Machi Esports. How good do we think G2 is? Eric, I'll start with you. How good do you think G2 is going into this tournament?
I kind of would have liked almost if you hit me last on this, because I think G2 is incredible going into this. So like they had a very slow start, obviously, in this split, but now we're somehow in October here in the year 2020. Just because this year was as bad for G2 as it is for the rest of us doesn't mean that that they're ready to get out of this pandemic. They've been in quarantine already for 2 weeks. They delayed the Warcraft patch, so Wonder's going to be in top form going into this main event. I don't see much. I don't see any reason they don't make top 2 leaving this group, especially with the way that we've seen the meta start shaking out and current form from Caps specifically.
Steven, do you agree or disagree?
It depends. Like, they've shown that they have meta adaptation issues. So if there's a huge shakeup where like we suddenly have pieces to the puzzle to stop the Ornn or stop any of these meta picks, I don't think G2 can adapt unless they have their own weird pick that they're just going to bust out, and if it does work, they'll do well. If it doesn't work, they're going to be bad. So I think like it's a feast or famine kind of mentality on if they have the answers to the meta, whether it is playing the meta as it is well, or having their own answers to it and it working. So I think initially we're going to see them pull out some weird stuff. They're not warmed up. They're slow start, but like can finish strong. So I think week 1 will be very telling. If they come out strong and they're winning right out, they'll just go all the way through. If they have a rough start, then it's a coin toss, and we will see if Grabs can give them anything to work with, or if they agree with what Grabs tells them to do.
Steven, question number 2, we'll start with you, the declared Team Liquid fan. Do you think Team Liquid's performance in the play-in stage says that they are ready to make it out of this group?
Yes, I think they can make it out of group if they keep doing what they're doing, and they stay. We're fortunate enough to be in a meta where like steady snowball will result in a win. And you just check those boxes. You take those all the way to the bank. And unless there's a huge meta shakeup, because they can't adapt, like Impact did the best I've seen him play all year. The world's buff is strong, and I think there's just so much value in going through. Like, it's the Cloud9 thing. You go through playoffs, play-ins, and you have the stage time. You have the warm up. They're hot in the frying pan, and they're just gonna keep that temperature and go all the way through.
Eric, do you agree or disagree?
I think they'll do NA proud in how they perform in this group. Making it out seems like a stretch to me, and the main reason why is they're a very poor stylistic matchup for G2. G2, who are very good at punishing teams who just play by the book League of Legends. And then when you look at Suning is actually, in my opinion, just a better version of what TL is bringing to the table across most roles. And TL's strongest role is Core JJ, and Core is being matched up against Sword Art, who's another player who has made it out of groups at Worlds multiple times, and is a very strong opponent. It's like they're stylistically incredibly similar. Does he have a championship? No.
Does Core JJ?
But I believe that both of them now have the same number of Korean teammates, so we'll see how this goes. But actually,
does that meme still live through?
That's actually not true. That was me just joking there. The actual carry players from Suning are Bin and SOFM. So it's not even it's actually not even like a stressed Korean team. Like this is the sole Vietnamese jungler in this tournament. And I want to see SOFM play Lee Sin. So let's see how this goes. SOFM has also been playing Hecarim before it was cool. So I'm expecting I don't know, and Suning won a lot of games by specifically in a very similar way to how TL did, which is solid gameplay and punishing mistakes. So their matches will be very interesting. Like I said, though, I just think that across the board, they have better pieces to work with in some of these roles, and their team fighting is insane. So I just have a hard time seeing TL be able to take them out in this scenario.
And it is the traditional thing to think about with LPL teams is most LPL teams that we've seen at Worlds and in their own regions are incredible team fighters. That's been a tradition of the region for a very, very long time. And Suning are no exception to that rule. And that's the problem is in NA, Team Liquid's team fighting has been good enough. I don't know if you go to a late game against Suning and win that fight. That concerns me for TL, since that's kind of what they want to do most of the time. I don't think it's good for them.
Especially since the role they're going to need to punish is going to be Angel in mid lane. And they haven't actually been super Jensen did good in play-ins, but it was really Broxa and Core JJ stepping up. So we'll need a lot out of Jensen in every game in groups if we want to see TL make it out.
And that's where I get nervous as well, just as I want Jensen to just shake off whatever reservations he has and just play his brains out, because I know he can. I know he can pick Silas and just run it in and make plays happen. Orianna, he's just got to do it. He's not just doing it. Just play the game.
He's probably going to need to play Echo into Syndra at least once, and so we'll need to see how it goes. Suning love picking Syndra to kind of mask Angel and then give him some range. So like, he'll need to be able to play that matchup. That's the big thing to me.
Gentlemen, I hate to be this guy, and I apologize in advance if we have any fans of the formerly LMS, I believe PCS these days. Do we have any real thoughts about Machi Esports?
I don't know enough, to be honest.
I don't know enough.
I don't either. I feel more informed about Talon now, having seen their players and their comp, and knowing Tank. Because as a former Snake fan, I'm actually surprisingly informed about a lot of players in this tournament. So we'll kind of. So I'll be able to talk more about Talon, I think, in Group B.
I think
so
Machi's job is to like take some games off of Suning and G2 on accident, and then Liquid just like wins and goes forward. That's their purpose.
So it might not be on accident. Like we saw Talon had good macro, and had strong had a pretty strong game sense going into these games, and then were able to win with leads. Machi in their finals match against Talon, and that's all I really have to work with. Typically had better lane presence than Talon, who are much slower to get into the games. And so we'll be seeing a slower Talon probably going into the group stage. So Machi, we know, like, has better lanes than what we were seeing from Talon, and Talon was winning lanes pretty handily in play-ins. So that might be enough power to get them wins in some of these games. We'll have to see how it works. Mid lane will not be their power. Well, wait, I'm thinking tank. Never mind. I'll wait.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
There's a whole next group.
we're gonna do our PICKEMS, which all three of us have done our PICKEMS, and we're going to reveal them one group at a time. So,
ooh, spicy.
Steven, you can go first. What is your PICKEMS?
I have to pull it
Group
up. Mercy, hold on. Okay. PICKEMS. Okay. I already made my picks. Okay. So Group A is Team Liquid, Suning, G2, and Machi.
Spicy. Very spicy. Eric, what are your picks for Group A?
So I had G2 at top of this group, and then Suning in spot 2 for making it out, then Machi, and then Team Liquid in 4th.
Oh, you bullied me.
So, yeah.
Eric and I have the exact same PICKEMS.
Ooh, so someone's gonna be wrong.
I also have G2 and Suning top 2, and Machi above Team Liquid. Yeah. I'm here to be a hater. Let's get it.
I just don't think that G2 is gonna, like. I think we're all high off of last year, and last year was last year, and that's not this year. They can't do that cheddar cheese shit and ride that for the whole thing.
I disagree.
We'll see.
We'll see how it goes. Let's go to Group B. So Group B is the one of the two groups in this where you arguably have two of the tournament favorites in Group B, in JD Gaming and Damwon Gaming. So we're going to talk about the other two teams in this group. Eric, you already started talking a little bit about the PSG Talon. Out go Uniboy and Kongyue. In goes their normal roster for group stage. Do you think that they have a chance of standing up to these top two teams in this group in Damwon and JDG?
No, and I think they're even going to be pressed by Rogue. And a part of it's going to be that they're going to be slower, and going slower is not going to be good against either Damwon or JDG. You want to be able to take pressure to JDG. That's how top and these other teams have managed to beat them. You do not beat them in late game team fights. And then Damwon on the flip side, you need to be able to survive early game against Damwon, which no one in LCK was able to do, including in their multi-patch set. Or was that in the 4-3, wasn't it? Never mind. But no one was able to do it against Damwon. They had very quick 3-0s in every game that matters. So,
Steven, do you have any hope for PSG Talon?
So I'm still going to go off of I think they should warm up their players. So maybe like swap one person in, or like I don't think doing the whole
Can't do
roster. They can't. You have to.
No,
They can't. No, they're done.
Oh wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It was an emergency situation. It's the only way they were able to play it. They have to play their real roster now.
Oh, that
so
sucks.
tank guaranteed in. So the one role that's expected to be an upgrade was at ADC, I believe.
Yeah.
Which
And then
Unified played.
Oh yeah, he did getting
Yeah.
later into it.
Unified is the one of the regular roster that did get to play in the play-in stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Kongyu is like, is he better than Uniboy?
Well, Uniboy was the sub mid laner, so now
they
it
got
was
it all
Uniboy
messed up.
and Kongwei,
Okay,
and
so
now
River
it's
is
gonna be
playing.
Tank. Yeah. So
Okay.
like I don't know as much about their jungler. What I do know is Tank. So Tank is a control mage player, which you'd think would be good with Orianna in this meta, but his primary picks historically have been Victor and Corki. So he's much more slower in this game, and we've seen a lot of Tank, or I've seen a lot of Tank over the years, and Tank into Yagao is actually a known matchup in a lot of ways. Yagao is punishable on champ pool as well as some other things, but historically he still wins lane. So like this is not a good spot for Talon, I believe, having to sub these players back in going into this. They might be riding high on the fact that they did manage to win with 3 subs for a part of that, but like I don't expect them to take games off of JDG, who I feel is more of a known matchup just because of Tank, and then and I definitely don't think they're going to be able to take games off of Damwon.
For the record, Tank's picks in the PCS summer playoff tournament. He had, 3 games on Zoe, 5 games on Azir, 2 games on Corki, 1 Lucian game, and 2 Syndra games and an Orianna game. So basically just control mages with the 1 Lucian game.
Yeah. So he kind of matches up pretty equitably to Larson as far as the pool is concerned. Although Larson has brought out the like Rogue really impressed me in playoffs, especially in their series against Mad Lions. After their like humiliating stomp, they managed to figure out like how to pivot their to Fnatic. They managed to figure out how to pivot their comp pick ban back and then fix their identity in the meta with the Akali pick in mid, and then changing up some of their other roles and how they approach the game. And that was very impressive to me. A lot of teams in NA, if they don't fit the meta, they continue to pick their top laner weak side into TSM repeatedly and then get stomped. So like it really impressed me that they were able to do that. I think they'll match up very well against Talon. As far as like what they bring to the table. Like I think they'll have a little bit more versatility in roles that are not top lane. And I actually expect them to be able to have good map pressure in that matchup. I do not believe Rogue has a good matchup against either of the other 2 teams. Damwon, who will eat the control mage mid player alive, as well as poor Finn. So I do not imagine Finn will have a very good stat block coming out of the round robin, however it goes.
I want to believe in Rogue. I really do. I think that Larson is a really, really good player, as we noted, and I think that you can maybe build some things out of what he can do. But the talking point with this group is the same as it's always been. It's you have Finn, who has to play against Zoom, and
Nuguri.
Nogri.
Yeah.
which is a problem for you winning any games. I just I think there is a world in which Rogue finds some games through mid lane and through bottom lane, because I do think their bottom lane is really, really solid. But will it be enough to actually win them a game against either of the big dogs, which is what they need, a win against one of those two teams to maybe force a tiebreak to get themselves out. You only need one, and then you need to beat them in a tiebreak. And I think there's a world in which it happens, but it's not a very common one.
Obviously, the dream scenario is Rogue locks in Draven for Han Sama against Damwon. They win a game with it, and then Damwon gets the clap back with locking the Draven for Ghost, and then they completely swap play styles to actually snowball through bot lane, and then they do it. Like, that would be like some wonderful storylines for watching these games. I enjoy watching Draven at high level games because it adds the mini game of will Draven get the stacks or not? How deep will Han Sama turret dive in order to try and cash out? But yeah, playing her on bot would be an interesting way to take this.
Well, and
especially
it's
since Commander is a sleeped-on support in this.
We didn't see it much in play-ins, but there were a couple of games where you had some really hard ADC carry games. The Raze's game on Ezreal and Karzi's game on Ezreal are the two examples that come to my head immediately. Like,
Tactical Twitch.
Yeah, then tactical Twitch. The Twitch pick's another one that can really pop off. Like, there's a world where you can play her on bot lane and make this work, and I think Han Sama is a good enough player that you can do it. But
so one of the other trends in play-ins that makes this really interesting, and it kind of revolves around this Twitch pick. There were two things that were very different in play-ins than what I expect going into these groups, especially this group, in terms of gameplay. The first is that dragon take times for first dragon were incredibly late. Compared with what we expected going in, where the first dragon was like falling like 13 minutes, 14 minutes into some of these games, and that's much more unlikely with some of these teams. And what we expect to see at this stage, if that's a trend that continues, that's going to be very interesting to be on the lookout for. And tied with that, there's the fact that supports then kind of got stuck in lane more in play-ins than what we're expecting. Core JJ was one of the few who really managed to leave lane to then make these plays happen. But like, we saw a lot of like these Leonas getting locked in lane for a very long amount of time because they were paired with either a Twitch or some other champion that required more hand-holding in this lane phase. And so I'm really curious to see then what that means going into this too, because I don't believe that Twitch gets to live in some of these games if these aggressive supports are being picked to that same extent. Like, I'm curious to see if these other teams that are more focused on roaming supports pick the Twitch themselves, or if that's going to be a pick that falls through with just how they approach the gameplay.
You know, a team I wouldn't pick Twitch into without some coverage? Damwon Gaming. You know why? You're gonna get Pantheon picked into you and die a bunch.
Yeah, and that's just like a part of where that whole scenario just gets interesting to me with how those new bot lane picks work out. We also saw Vayne in 2 different lanes in play-ins, which was pretty crazy. I still think it'll be
right?
One of
there
them.
was one bot lane.
There was also a bot
Vayne.
lane.
There was a bot lane Vayne that went a lot less well than the mid lane Vayne.
Yeah. It's actually better mid. It fits in that role with like the Tristana and the Lucian a lot better, in my opinion, than it does.
Particularly into the set pick, which was what it was into.
Yeah.
All right, let's go through our picks. Steven, what are your picks for Group B?
Okay, so I want to justify it, but it's spicy, of course.
That's fine. Let's do it.
JD Gaming, Damwon, Rogue, and then Talon.
Okay.
All right.
Specifically because they play each other first in the schedule, and I think if anyone's going to let the Ornn pick through, thinking they have a counter pick, it would be Damwon, and JDG is going to pick it up and win with it, and then they'll just have that one win advantage the entire time, and then end up at top just for that. And if that happens,
I really hope it doesn't happen, because I want to see Zoom on not Ornn, because Zoom's so good.
he is, but that's what I'm saying. Like they'll just.
They'll do it. It'll make me sad.
I actually think it might go the other way, which is where it's really sad, because in Damwon's playoff series, like in the finals, they actually in game 1 locked this Ornn comp in against was it DRX, and they like hard stomped DRX with like their own team comp. And it was like the most disheartening thing I've ever seen, because like you're expecting here they'd have like Nuggery and Showmaker and Canyon just like hard carrying a game, and instead they drafted this like team fight comp and like casually won lanes and snowballed bot. And it's like, what are you doing? Why would you do this, Damwon? This isn't what I want to see out of you. And then they swap back in games 2 and 3, but like it was still
the team comp was Ornn, Volibear, Syndra, Caitlyn, Lux.
Yeah, it was so disheartening to like watch them just hard win a game like that. So I would actually see it going the other way, just like from what we've seen so far. I don't think that JDD would lock the Ornn. I hope they prove me wrong, because like I also feel that like Gangplank was underutilized into the Ornn in play-ins, and the one time it got picked, it got stomped too.
Yes.
And so that was into Renekton, to be fair, but like it's Gangplank into Ornn is like what you would see in LCS at least as an answer for this pick, because a lot of these immobile carries are going to be played, and you just drop the Gangplank alt over it. That's another good thing to combo with Lilia.
And if you don't know, Zoom is the best Gangplank player at this tournament.
Yes, so I would see him picking Gangplank into that Ornn comfortably in terms of like how they're going to approach the game. No, but like I see no problems with picking them over Damwon in this. They're
really good.
They're two of the favorites in this tournament. But yeah, but I like the spice.
What's your picks, Eric? Is it about the same as that, but with Damwon on top?
I have Damwon on top, and then JDG, and then Rogue, and then Talon.
I am choosing to believe in a choke. I have been sitting here hyping up JD for the last 10 to 15 minutes. I am picking Rogue to finish second in this group.
Oh boy! And then Damwon getting out, or
I have Damwon, Rogue, JD, and Talon.
Whoa.
Oh, that's spicy.
I thought I was spicy, Lord.
I need something spicy.
The
And
spicy
I'm
is Liquid
choosing to
making it
believe
out of the
that
top of
something
A.
is going to go wrong. It's how these go every year, right? Something weird is going to happen, and we know something weird's going to happen.
Albus Luna
I am
makes it out
choosing
again. They come out.
I am choosing to believe in Hans Sama the hard carry. That's where I'm at.
I mean, he is one of the Draven players in this. You have both the Draven players getting out. That seems to be a statement. And with what we saw earlier on, if the meta stands in some ways, like it could like cause problems for JDG and how to approach these fights. Could theoretically, as well as Damwon, with like what to do in the meta where the tanks emerge again, or if Loken should be playing different champions. That would be like one of the ways they could be punished.
All right, before we move to Group C, another shout out. Check out fnky.store to check out all of our funky gear, and check out fnky.games. Did I read the link right? fnkygames.com. There we go. To check out everything else, check out the YouTube channel, all that jazz. It's good stuff. All right, Group C. In previous years, we've had groups of life and groups of death. Group C is the group of spice. Because as so many people have said in doing their pick'ems and looking at this group, since it was predicted and created, nobody knows how these four teams are going to finish. So LGD, Gen G, Fnatic, and TSM. Let's start with LGD, because we talked about them a little bit during the play-in section. They inted a little bit in their early group stage, had to go to a playoff game against V3 to not immediately go home, but After that point, won 6 straight games, swept both of their best of threes, looked completely dominant. And now we've talked about the play-ins buff with a couple of the other teams that some of us believe more in than others. I think LGD is the team that's going to come in with the strongest playoff buff of anyone. Eric, what do you think LGD is going to look like coming into this group stage?
While I definitely agree with you about the play-ins buff, LGD, like, just like as an organization, everyone remembers them choking in 2014.
15.
Was it 15? Where they got absolutely dumpstered in groups when they were expected to be like one of the winners of the whole tournament, and and a lot of that looked like they just were lost in some of this gameplay, and they had players who ran it down. Very similar to what we saw from Peanut and GA going into this play-in stage. And LGD, even in the regular season, was notorious for high highs and low lows. They're one of the teams that I saw win games against like Dragon Souls in the regular season by playing split push in this meta, which is crazy. I think that GA having had a chance to run it down a few times is really good for them going into this group.
Get it out of his system.
Get it out of his system. Same with Peanut. Like, let them have these like losing matchups where they hard feed their lane opponents who they clearly should be beating, as we then see them like sweep these teams in playoffs. But like I expect that GA and Peanut will perform much better in this portion, and that they should actually have early game leads against a number of these teams they are playing against.
Steven, do you believe in LGD?
No. No.
Okay.
I have
short and sweet.
Yeah, like I think like you're gonna experience all of it. We had the low lows, and they're gonna go high highs and immediately into the low lows. I think this group will be close. Like, it's not gonna be like there's a 0-4 and 4-1, and like it's gonna be like a couple games difference. That's gonna be the determining factor. But I don't think they play consistently enough, because it's double round robin, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so,
what groups is.
Yeah, so it's a total of
6 games.
6 games. So I just don't think they win a majority of those games. I think they're going to pick some games up where we're going to get it together, but I think they're too dependent on Peanut's shot calling to just hold it together the whole time.
I will feed you another one, Steven.
Yeah.
Do you believe in TSM?
No. I think they are also dependent on a single shot caller with his Bjergsen, and Bjergsen, for some reason, just became Reginald 2.0, where he will just make calls that make sure that he's doing well. Even if he's in a supportive character like Zillion or whatever, he's still making sure that he's in the best position that he can possibly be. I think Spica has broken away from completely being on the leash, but I think when you're so dependent on one player to do well, and yes, he's a great control mage player, and he can play assassins, he can do all these great things, but this is a team game, and you're going to be versing 5 really good people on the other side of the map, and if it's just you playing chess with all of your teammates and not trusting them, I think it's wild watching some of the TSM video content with Bjergsen's like, yeah, I just couldn't trust my teammates to do the right thing. I really trust this team though, but like the last one's like people just don't know how to play the game, and like I felt like I had to just tell them what to do all the time. It's like, I don't know, man.
Eric, you've been hurt by them before. Do you believe in TSM?
So what I will say about TSM is I think this meta is actually absurd for this particular roster. And what I mean by that is Broken Blade, if he is free from Ornn, which I assume they will ban, it's really good for him, and he knows a lot of counter matchups in this, and has a pretty good position there. And I expect that Bjergsen will do very well on this Orianna, Zoe, whatever patch. It also, like, the jungle picks that are good are the ones that Spica has looked the best on so far.
And that's
as
the
long
thing.
as-
We should note, Spica was awesome in playoffs. He
Yes.
played the best League of Legends of his life, getting the TSM the championship this year. Like, regardless of what I think or we think about the organization and their views, I think Spica deserved a ton of credit for how their playoff run went, and I am as excited to watch him as I am almost any player in this group, just to see how he does.
And just to call it out, his champ pool looked notably different in that playoff run than it did in some of their regular season games where they were falling to pieces. And I expect that will continue in this portion of the tournament with the way the meta has overall shifted, with Nidalee being a highly contested, powerful pick, and that being one of his best champions.
Yep.
Like, I would not be
It's
surprised.
huge for him.
Yeah, I think if he's allowed to play the game the way he wants to play it and how he is seeing the game being played out, they could go far. I don't know if that's going to happen on the big stage.
I also think if you can get away with the Twitch pick in this group, I think this group is one to watch with the Twitch pick in particular. We talked about Draven with the last group. TSM playing a Twitch comp with a Zillion in the mid, I think that's could go some places and could be really, really gross. And we know they like to put Bjerg on the Zillion.
But we're talking about players having world's buffs. You always have the double lift world's nerf.
That is the thing about this. Is trusting double lift.
Will he be motivated enough to play the game and use his summoner spells?
And that carries nicely into our next discussion topic. I started with Steven last time. I'll start with Eric this time. Eric, do you believe in Fnatic?
No. I think Fnatic's one shot for games in this group is if teams just don't ban Lucian against them. That's been the one time. They looked so powerful in that series against Rogue, and then I was so incredibly disappointed with their finals appearance against G2. If for some reason they've managed to figure out how to play these new comps and they've hit this like magical synergy where the Broxah champions and the Hylissang champions click and resonate with the rest of their team, fantastic. I'd be very happy. I love these players, but I don't see it happening yet. I don't see what could have changed that would have prompted this, especially since it seems more likely that supports are going to get locked in bot lane based off of what we saw in play-in so far.
I'm gonna stop you real quick. Broxah's in Group B.
Don't you take Broxah away from me. You have self-made now.
Self-made? What did I say, Broxah?
You said Broxah. You said Broxah.
Broxah Hylissang.
I said Broxah instead of Bwipo. Is that what it was?
I guess.
Probably, yep.
Yeah, because like I meant to say Bwipo champion pools and then Hylissang. Where like
I'm like, Broxah's
awkward.
not on that team anymore.
I
Let
was
me just check
about to say,
that
this is
Not
some-
anymore. I have to hold this cat now, I guess. So the big thing to Bwipo's champion pool and Hylissang's are the question mark. Can they play champions that coordinate with how Self-Made and Reckless want to play the game? And then do they actually look like they know what they're doing when they do lock those champions in? And I have low confidence in that with what we've seen so far.
Steven, do you have any Fnatic thoughts?
I think Self-Made is made for this jungle meta, and I think if they play through him and people just don't run it down, Hylissang, Craps. If he's not playing in for Caps, we'll be fine. I think
That's
they'll.
B2.
what is with
We're
you guys?
we're
God
falling
damn
apart
it!
now.
The European
2019.
people. Wait, who the?
Nemesis. It's Nemesis in
dude.
mid.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
You went to Craps and Caps, and you already talked about G2.
I know G2. They're just they're just the same team now. Just
No, they're very different.
They're
actually.
very
They have very different
No,
problems.
yeah. No, god damn.
One of them loses to League of Legends. The other one loses to World of Warcraft.
World
You
of
have to keep them straight. They lose
Oh
to
my
very
God,
different
things.
games.
Yeah, no. Nemesis playing well is important. Reckless, like, playing well. Hylissang playing champions, his pick champions, but not feeding on them. I think it's important, but I think they can do it. I think I have him placed higher than I think Eric does in my pick'ems. So I think they're going to do well with the meta, pretty much exclusively because of self-made.
I think they're going to do well with the meta, but I'm again, I think this is a recurring theme with how I'm thinking about these groups. They should also consider playing around their bot lane. I am of the opinion that Reckless is a very good player, and I think that playing around him could be helpful to your team. And also, if you can do so, if you can do so in a way that reduces the focus on Nemesis, I think that would also be beneficial for your team succeeding. Because Nemesis has had some problems lately.
Yes.
So I wonder with them if it's the balance thing with them, right? It's the same thing as Rogue, only their problem is mid lane instead of top lane. I don't know if Nemesis is going to be good enough to keep them involved in this.
What
and that is
control mages does he play?
So Nemesis's big champions are Twisted Fate and Lucian. That's what he's looked good on. He has played the control mages, and has looked pretty bad, but it's really hard to tell how much of it is just him and how much of it is the way that Fnatic as a whole are playing in their map presence. But like his two picks that have looked good are Lucian and Twisted Fate, both of which are in meta and are pretty strong, but like they've had some really awkward games.
And are they going to pick around him because of that?
So Fnatic's pick ban is one of their biggest problems as a whole, and it's largely because of Hylissang and Bwipo's champion pool and what they're trying to do with the game, and like the team as a whole, like not knowing how to optimize what they're doing with the meta things that they should be doing to approach these games. I know we've left Genji for last. Why have we done this?
Because I was going, I because it's in the order I typed it in my summary.
Okay, all right. Well,
that's it. Eric, do you believe in Genji?
Oh, hell yes, I believe in Genji. I think that Ruler in Life, speaking of playing around bot lane, is like, first off, it's the one team in at a high level in this tournament that plays around bot lane, and they do it very well. Their series against DRX had a lot of Ruler and Life winning 2v2s, and then also having Clid show up and then gank for that lane and then snowballing through it. Ruler has the best Kalista out of any player active in this tournament. Speaking of world champions, I think he's back and he looks very strong right now. I would not be surprised to see them go make a very deep run overall.
Here's my Ruler's the best player in this group. That's my take.
Yes.
Let me just double check. Yes.
Ruler's the best player in this group, and I don't think it's big.
Yeah.
So like that, I think that's going to matter a lot,
especially when you can put him on good stuff. Like it's not like he has to play double bruiser bot or something. Like he has a wealth of like high prio picks where he can excel on.
Correct, and really snowball these games. Like I'm expecting Kalista, Ashe, theoretically Caitlyn, and Ezreal out of Ruler. Those four would be like the champions that I'm expecting. I don't think he's going to be on Twitch duty.
We'll give him Vayne then. Like he can perform on anything, so that's the issue. You can't.
Well, the part of the problem there is that like Vayne can be strong, but it's not an early game champion. I'm expecting them to put Ruler on champions that they can gank for to put him ahead, and then to like hard snowball these games. And that's the game plan that makes the most sense to me, and I would not be surprised if they run with that.
Overwhelming pick rate Ashe, Ezreal, Kalista over this summer. 17 games Ashe, 14 games Ezreal, 8 games Kalista. Makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Steven, picks.
My pick'ems are Genji top, followed by Fnatic, then TSM, then LGD.
Okay. Eric, picks.
All right. So I have Genji, and then I have TSM making it out of groups.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and then LGD, and then Fnatic. It's kind of like the Thorin TSM getting out of groups, which is it's like how much can we watch them suffer if they get to the best of fives, more than anything else. But I actually do think this meta is really good for them, and how it'll stack up in some of these games.
LGD, Genji, Fnatic, TSM.
Whoa!
Wow.
I'm
right.
drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I am
That's
ready.
a freight train of momentum you think they have.
I am ready to be hurt, LGD. Bring it on. I am prepared.
What are the fans called again? Optimists? Is that where we are now?
It's not going to be League's greatest disappointment this time. It's going to be better.
Better than League's greatest disappointment. Truly the dankest of possible timelines.
I don't know. Like I think they figured it out, and I think that there's a chance that they can pull it off in this group. This is also me saying I don't believe in TSM at all.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit. I think they're going 0-6. There's my hot take.
Oof. Losing both games against Fnatic is like an impressive feat.
That's my hot take. I think they're going 0-6.
Yeah.
So do you just have LGD just winning the whole thing at that rate?
Yeah, we'll see when we get to the break. I gotta see who they match up with in the best of 5. We'll see. The other fun thing with this group is based on how even some people think it could be. What if it all goes 3-3 and they have to do hilarious tiebreakers? Just saying. I think that could be
Oh yeah, if they had tiebreakers, oh no.
Tragedy.
Oh no,
struck.
Cat.
If they hit tiebreakers, obviously TSM's win rate goes way down and Fnatic stock goes way up. That's a known factor.
Invest.
Yeah.
The NA and EU the tiebreaker scenario, which Mad Lions ruined.
Oofies.
Unlucky. All right, our last group, which I think is maybe the most fun to watch, if only because Unicorns of Love are in it. So, final group is Top Esports, Dragon X, FlyQuest, and the only Unicorns of Love making their first ever appearance in the group stage, and everyone rejoiced. All right, Eric, talk to me about Unicorns of Love. How glad are you that they're here?
I am so glad they're here. Them not making franchising in LEC was a tragedy. Although I understand why, from a branding perspective, that might not have been the best call. But them being here is fantastic. Sheepy, I think, is one of these underrated brains of League of Legends. Even though every team he's ever been involved with has looked this crazy. I love the Zig spot. I love their use of Kassadin in some of these lane matchups, although I'm curious if he'll have the same kind of lane leads against the teams in this group. And I really liked kind of just their general approach to the game. And I feel that, like, as an organization, UOL has a history of upsets. And this is a group where they will need those.
The composition that I thought was most interesting that they played was the game where they built around Swain bot lane. I thought that was it's not something they'd be able to do against every team comp, but I thought that the way that whole composition came together was something that, okay, this is something else we have in the bag. It's not just playing a mage bot lane that can clear things at range, deal with problems, and have an AD source elsewhere. We're playing kind of a bruiser setup. We're playing punish you if you have to get in short range with us. And I think that there's more. I suspect that's not the only trick they have to pull out of the bag.
Yeah, I think that comp will work very well on the teams that play standard in this group that have lanes that show weakness.
Eric, do you want to talk about FlyQuest? You sound like you want to talk about FlyQuest.
Oh, you heard me say lanes that show weakness. So the big issue I have with FlyQuest is that they showed that they're pretty reliant on solo being their weak side of the map. and that worked in NA when teams don't punish weak side, and when he could get away with winning lanes that he shouldn't. I don't expect that to happen as much against any of the top laners in this group, even like except maybe against DRX with Doran. Top esports and UOL won't let that happen as much. I also am I'm also really low on Turtle and Ignar's lane phase and their laning stats. Ignar is a great roaming support, and Turtle is good in team fighting, but their lane stats are not good. And if they're going up against either punishing lanes like this Swain bot lane you just mentioned that are designed to also survive lane but offer some other way of changing the game state when we hit these mid-game dragon fights, or if they're just up against teams with better versions of some of these players, they're gonna have a rough time of it in those roles specifically. A lot of FlyQuest's chances to me are really centered around Santorin and Power of Evil really stepping up. Power of Evil's made his career off of beating up Bjergsen a couple of times, so hopefully they managed to make that happen, but it seems like it's really asking a lot of those two players specifically to me for them to be able to come out okay in this.
A quick note before I let Steven talk. It's freaking cool that PoE finally gets to play against the UOL where he first made his name. That's an amazing game to get to have happen here.
Yeah.
Steven, how do you see FlyQuest making any upsets in this group? And if so, how? Do you agree that it's the mid jungle?
I think Solo will perform when he needs to, and I think that Power of Evil is gonna pretend Smurf on people, and people are gonna be unsettled by that just because control mages are really well, and I think they've had enough time to take momentum from NA and train up, and I think they're in a good group to do okay, and so I think that'll be good, and I don't think bot lane is as important as jungle mid top right now. So I think because that is their weakness is bot side, that it's covered enough where it won't matter too much. I'll probably regret that later, but I think that if they're going to do well, this is the time to do it.
Well, and I think the thing to note, looking at the wider matchup, you obviously, if you look at this in the traditional sense, top esports and Dragon X are probably the favorites to get out of this group. Just FlyQuest is a weaker NA team. UOL coming from a wildcard region, playing really well, but coming from a wildcard region. That's where it's going to look at. And I think that the obvious focus point when looking at those matchups is Knight and Chovy against Power of Evil and No Man's. You have arguably the two best mid laners in the world, two of the top three mid laners in the world, playing against players who traditionally have not necessarily been known for their laning skills. I'll put it that way. And the trick with them is PoE, with his unicorn blood, has a history of spicy picks. UOL, because they're UOL, have a history of spicy picks. I think they're probably going to try something to offset the problems that could be caused by having to play against Knight and Chovy. I don't know what, and I don't know if it'll work, but I think they will try something. Both teams, both UOL and FlyQuest.
A part of the fear and danger of that is that Knight and Chovy are also both fantastic at counterplaying people who try to punish them. That's one of their best things. DRX with Chovy on basically any champion. Knight has some sick fallbacks, and he can play Galio really well. And it's really sad that you have one of the best players in the world stuck on Galio duty, but if he can play Galio, come out of lane even or ahead, as we were seeing in the play-in stages, Galio can absolutely destroy some of these mid-game fight scenarios.
And you say that, but Faker's played some of the best Galio games I've ever seen. And the impact that you can have on a wider game on that champion, if you can come out of the lane okay. There are a couple of T1 games I remember in this year and past years where it's been the hardest carry on a Galio that I've ever seen. And Knight has the ability to play that same kind of way. So it's not the traditional sense of, is Knight the best player in the world? Possibly. But it doesn't necessarily always have to look like mechanical outplay.
Totally.
So, I don't know if I have any other points beyond that. Is I have the fear of how the mid lanes in this group are going to go. That is the best way to put it, is fear. But that doesn't mean the picks can't be spicy. Steven, what are your picks for this group?
So mine are, and I guess we're not going to touch on top just because they're top.
They're probably the best team in the world.
Okay, yeah. So
I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah. So mine is top, FlyQuest, DRX, and then Unicorns. And I have another explanation for it.
Okay.
Because DRX's schedule is first UOL, then top, then FlyQuest. I think for some reason they're going to get memed on by UOL and then just get wienered by top. And they're going to be so tilted by the time they get to FlyQuest, they'll drop that game too. And then just, it won't matter at that point.
So,
Eric, what are your picks?
I have Top Esports coming out first. Then I have Unicorns of Love making it out of groups. Then DRX and then FlyQuest. I actually don't think PoE can beat Unicorns. And that's a spicy take, I know, but I have a feeling that I trust Sheepy more than PoE, and I'm just going off of Legacy Unicorns factor there. That's how I expect that matchup to go.
Got some nostalgia goggles on.
And DRX has a number of weak punishable lanes, as well as I don't have much faith in Piosik being able to actually stand up to Anonasik, or definitely not Karsa. So I have that's just kind of how I see this group shaking out, is that DRX is just going to barely miss out, and FlyQuest is going to have a real rough time.
What's fun about this is mine kind of combine your guys' takes into the spiciest meatball possible. I also have top and Unicorns coming out of the group, but I have FlyQuest finishing third and DRX finishing dead last.
Wow.
The thing with DRX that we saw across the LCK regular season is this team tilts. They do. There is a record of that. And this team is so dependent on Chovy, to their detriment sometimes, considering they have Deft, who is a historically incredible ADC player. And I do have concerns about tilt with this team. I think that if it goes sideways off the start, they could be in for a world of hurt. And there are few better teams to tilt against than having to play against whatever junk Sheepy comes up with
In the first game.
It's the thing. You take it from Deft's shoes, for example. If you have to play against whatever garbage Gadget pulls out in game one and have an unfortunate time, then you have to play against Jackie Love and get styled on. It doesn't feel very good, and it puts you in a pretty bad place. And on Eric's point about jungle, I think Santorin can out jungle Piosik.
Santorin's like at the top of his game for some reason.
Santorin had the best season he's had in his very long career this season, and I'm excited to see what he can do. So I think DRX may be the most interesting team to drop out that early in this, because I don't trust them. So we've got a good selection of different pick'ems across the three of us, which is good. I did not look at your guys' beforehand, so we got some independence going on between us, which is a desired among a show. So now we can see who gets it right.
This is gonna be spicy.
So,
I think all of us have like our own group that's a little spicier than the next. So like one of unless everything's just like super bland and typical, which I guess Worlds can be, but I don't think all of us will be.
There hasn't really ever been a Worlds group stage that's just gone chalk in all four groups.
Yeah.
There's always something that happens, and that's part of the art of trying to get the perfect pick'em, is you have to throw some spice in there, right? You just have to.
Because it's gonna happen.
If a pick'em is ever like really predictable, like if accuracy rates skyrocket for all pick'ems, it's actually a sign that they have a really bad meta,
Yep.
more than anything else.
Juggernaut meta.
So, Juggernaut meta, being one of the examples, although that one was upsetting and tilting just because of people didn't know what it was going into it. That's a part of the surprise factor of the surprise patch, is that it can be really hard to figure out what's going to happen with those in some of these teams. But straightforward metas where we know what's going to happen, that's actually a bad game design sign more than anything else.
So basically, if everybody bans Ornn on red side, we're all going to be fine.
Yes, as they should.
Just
I don't-
every game of
I
the
don't
group
wanna
stage,
see
everybody
Ornn
ban
win.
Ornn on red side. Just get it done.
Remove him in the first round robin so everybody knows like it's just gone.
Yep, first ban red side every game. Treat it like what was it? Gangplank from Worlds 4 years ago when that
that was
Juggernaut meta
Mordekaiser
hit, we had to
Darius.
ban Gangplank every game. Just do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Ornn at all. I'm done with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap on all the groups. Games start. All three of us are in Central Time, so I will be referring to times by Central Standard Time in the U.S. Games start on Saturday, early morning at 3 a.m. Central Time, and I believe the first game, let me double check this to make sure I don't get this wrong, is FlyQuest against Top Esports.
Yeah, that's so
Which
unfortunate.
I think
Great
it's
way
an
to start.
unfortunate one. I think that might be an unfortunate one. I'm worried about that one.
Or
But you get
it
to
could be
follow it up with UOL Dragon X, which I think is going to be spicy.
Yeah, that's gonna be spicy no matter what. If FlyQuest pulls it off though, that I think that will tilt every team going forward. Just like what?
You can always pull that Top hasn't been here before outside of Jackie Love. You can pull that argument, and it might be different, but
Man,
We've
that would be
seen
so
with-
wild.
And we've seen with some of these LPL players getting to Worlds for the first time and having dominated domestically and then fallen short. I forget who EDG's AD carry was back.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Back
about.
with Clear Love a while ago, and he was like one of the most hyped players for a first Worlds appearance, and then he ended up choking on big stage. It was
would have been iBoy.
no, it wasn't iBoy. It was
Before
before
iBoy.
It
iBoy.
was before that,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and so like it can happen. The other big thing to always remember is that these actual teams that have been in the main event have been building up their own secret world scrim meta, and we have no visibility into what's been happening in that. So some totally funky stuff could be happening with these teams already, and like who's better than who that we have no visibility on until it shows up, and then they start talking about scrim results. Which is always a treasure.
Are you talking
Yes.
about Deft and Pawn in 2014?
No,
were
I'm
on
talking
Edward?
about it was an EDG player. It was before Deft and Pawn.
Before Deft and Pawn.
Oh, even earlier. Okay.
So
Yeah.
like 13? They weren't around.
It's a sign of how
before
long
that.
Clear Love played. That it's like he played with Clear Love, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Name is who I'm thinking of.
Yes.
When Name made it in for the first time and was incredibly hyped as like another one of these all-star Chinese ADCs alongside of Uzi to show up, and then he kind of choked in some of these games, and it was really unfortunate. Clear Love also didn't have the best tournament, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of like teams that get a lot of hype domestically and then show up and choke. Damwon last year was also kind of an example of this, where they had a lot of hype going in, and they made it pretty far, but they still fell short in the end, just because of how rookie some of these players were.
With that said, we have gone an hour and 45 minutes, which I was going to try really hard not to do, but we're just good at talking for forever. So I hope some of you are still here. We appreciate you watching. We're going to wrap up with what's a good little fun thing to do. What's your favorite thing you did in solo queue this week? Eric, go first.
So I played one game of Viger, and I always lose on Viger most of the time. However, in this game, it got to go long enough that I would auto-attack turrets in the Nexus for 860 damage. And that was my highlight of the week, is auto-attacking turrets as Viger for 860 a pop.
Steven, what was your solo queue highlight of the week?
I tried Lilia in 2 games, and one was awful and one was great. So I have decided that I don't like that champion.
So what you're saying is she's perfectly balanced?
I think so. I think it's just a flavor of the month or flavor of the meta, and I don't see the priority that we saw in play-ins as a real thing. I think that's like a manifestation of coaches wanting to put something on the board. I just like she's like I don't. Maybe it's my chimp brain, but I just don't see her intrinsically more valuable than other picks. Piloting her or looking from the armchair coaching stance.
Yeah, from the full armchair League of Legends experience, I don't play solo queue because I'm bad at this game, but I am going to throw out my desire to see some in the inevitable state of Ornn bans. They're to fill those shoes. We've seen the Scion and the Malphite already. Give me a Poppy game, world's top laners. Let me see it.
Yep.
She's
It looked good in the one game it had.
Mm-hmm. She's disruptive. She's great into Nidalee,
And Camille.
Like it's you can do some excellent stuff with her in some of these matchups. And also Graves, actually, she does some hilarious stuff to Graves.
Lee Sin and Kindred are also in the list. There's a lot of Lucian. There's a ton of champions with dashes that are in meta that are very weak into it. I think you need to pick it into matchups that are good top lane, which is why I specifically called out the Camille.
Yep, you need the counter matchup, because if you don't, you're gonna get a Jace picked into you, and it's very unpleasant for the first 20 minutes of the game.
What is this experience you have, David?
It's like I've played that matchup, and it's not fun for me. I don't like it. So, with that said, thank you for tuning in. If you've listened to this whole podcast, bless you. Please feel free to send feedback our way. I mentioned our socials at the beginning of the podcast, but I'll mention them again as we go out. My Twitter handle is PROFCEDAR, Prof Cedar. Stevens is FNKY, Ireland, IR3LAND. And Eric's is Dark Penguin, D4RK Penguin. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have points, comments, questions, etc. We're still getting this started. I know my goal is to move this shorter and maybe split the episodes up a little bit more, but we just have a lot to talk about because we're getting started. So
world type.
Yes, world type, 100%. So please send your feedback our way. Check out the YouTube channel, which has other content on it, and check out the website, funkygames.com. Check out the store, fnky.store, with all kinds of swag you can get kitted out with from the outfitters down in St. Louis. Steven proudly repping down there. And that's about all for us. So this has been the second episode of the Reaction Time podcast. We will be back next week after the first round of group stage, if I remember correctly. It should be week 1, week 2. So we'll see how the week 1 of group stage develops and have more to talk about next week. So for Steven and Eric, I am David. This has been Reaction Time. We'll see you next week.
Unicorns, fear our horns. Unicorns, fear our horns.